Hello and welcome, my name is Mr. Popo and we are Popo. In this tutorial, we're going to be taking a look on how to create and animate and composite some futuristic HUD UI animation. It's very beginner friendly, so I'm going to take you part by part. This tutorial is very unique in a sense where we're not going to be wasting time in so many ways. So what I thought is I'm going to be explaining the most important part about animating the UI. And since there are a lot of elements that really look alike, I'm going to be taking those into a time lapse. So this tutorial is divided into two parts: explanation, time lapse, and time lapse will have a commentary whenever it is necessary. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Let's jump right into it. All right, so as you can see, I have already defined the edges of the UI. Now what's gonna happen is I already need to know what I'm gonna do, how this is gonna appear before I start animating. Doing anything else, starting to animate this is literally not good, because later on, if you regret and you think of a new idea, it's already too late, okay? So for that kind of cases, what I do, I always keep on a no animation, and then I duplicate it and I put one where I'm gonna try an animation. Because if, God forbids, if I think of a new way of animating this, or the client says, no, this is not what I was thinking of, can you give me another style? Then I can not have to re-delete the keyframes and everything. So I always keep one as a backup so that I can duplicate it as much as I want and I can try other animations. All right, so for this first animation, what we're gonna do is we're gonna have this come in. We're gonna have a holder that we're gonna create that will just open like a book, not like a book, but we're gonna find that out. And I'm gonna bring in the titles, then I'm gonna bring in this, and then I'm gonna pop this up, and then have all this coming, and then this one, the last one. And then of course this one will obviously coming the moment this is finished. And later on, if we have some time, we can even animate this going from here to here to here to here to here. And as it's going in, this one is actually changing as well. All right, so let's get started. All right, so we're gonna start by creating a, let's just call it this color. And we're gonna go slightly bright, okay. And I'm gonna make this. So the reason I use this is just a technique for me to let the user know that this is the area that the UI is gonna cover. So I'm just gonna go there. I'm gonna turn this up a little bit like that. Normally a UI when it comes in should not take anything more than 1 second. Normally, just the opening should not take more than 1 second. When it comes to games, it has to be 10 frames or 20 frames max if you really have to. But 10 frames is the golden number. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go to scale 1, 2. I could actually just go 1. A little bit slow, since this is not for a game, but for a movie. And a movie style frame. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna unlink this. The reason I'm unlinking this is because if I try to animate any of these values, they're gonna move together because they are linked. And that's what that icon means. So what I'm gonna do instead is I'm gonna unlink it so that I can animate this to 0. So what's happening here is we're gonna have something like that. All right, but it doesn't look that good. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go and easy ease or F9. All right, perfect. Now I'm just gonna make this come, I'm gonna make this come a little bit too faster. So I'm gonna hold this, make sure that this is the speed graph. I like to use the speed graph. And that's it. All right. Now, if we go back and try to see how this looks like instead, I need to go and replace this by holding Alt and dragging. This is going to be replaced. So if I look, see, what is the problem here? It's too bright. That's why I wanted to show you this. All right, so back here, we're gonna have to fix the opacity so that it's not that bright in the composition. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn this down from 100 to, let's just say 30%. Now, if I go, I'll see that that's gonna be all right. Okay, let's just put it around 20, and then we go back, and we look that that's all right. Okay, cool. Now, I'm just gonna put this as a keyframe of the end, And at a start, I'm gonna say it's around 10. And I'm just gonna go and see how that looks like. Perfect. Okay. So what I'm gonna do now is I want this to actually start disappearing as it goes in. And now that it goes here at 10, I'm gonna blink it so that it goes. So 10, and it needs to end at 0. All right, so I'm gonna duplicate this keyframe, and here I'm gonna select them both. I'm gonna do a toggle halt keyframe. That's why I duplicated it. Because if I did not duplicate it, this is gonna be a toggle hold. So nothing's gonna happen here. So now it animates, and then it's gonna start blinking until it disappears. So it's gonna disappear somewhere here. And that's what I'm gonna play on. So 10, 15, 3, and then it ends at 0. Okay, cool. Perfect. Okay, so I'm just gonna go here, press S, just so that I can go to the layer directly, which is layer 116. Let's go. So I'm just gonna solo it so that I can focus on it. I don't need these anymore, so I'm just gonna pull them back and take off the rulers. Now, this is like a line of where the title ends and where the screen area is. So that's what the line actually means. And what I'm gonna do normally, the way I animate this, it's just a very simple scale. So I'm just gonna do 20 frames. I'm gonna say that this is the scale at the end. And at the beginning, I'm gonna link this on all I wanna do is go for 0. And F9, and all I need to do now is make it come faster by selecting the last keyframes and dragging it. This is gonna speed everything up. So if I take this now and I have this on as well, this is what's gonna happen. Cool, but that's not really what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is a little bit of offset so that the screen gets, see? The screen, we tell the user that this is the area of the screen and now this is the title. All right, it's a little bit too late though. So we're gonna bring it a little bit like that. Cool. All right, now that we have these two, so doing the text, it's very simple. We have a lot of ways. One of them is to stay consistent, like we're gonna do with the others, and do it this way. So I'm just gonna give you two versions, all right? So I'm just gonna duplicate this so that we have something in the backup, and I'm gonna call this terminal backup. Okay, and I don't need the keyframes for this one. All right, so let's get back to our first example. The first example is, of course, doing it this way, bringing it under the line, the opacity, we're gonna show it like that. Of course, the speed is a little bit slow. It's actually really slow. Okay, so that is one way of doing it. Okay. So now to make things a little bit easier for me, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna check this too. I'm gonna bring them all the way on top, just so that I can we can just focus on these three now. Okay, so what would be great is if this text starts coming right after this finishes. See that? Cool. But the thing is, we see it here, which is a real problem. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna create an area where I want to see the text, which is technically here. I'm making it as big as this because I always have to account for what if the language changes? What if this goes in German, like schlach, 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 schlach? Like, it's not as small as Lost Data Terminal. In German, it's like flüchli schlach, flachli schlach. It's quite long. And in Arabic, inshallah. You know, it's pretty long. So I have to account for all that. That was actually Arabic, and that was German. So just so you guys know, I speak both languages, so I know what I'm saying. Now, if I use Alphamate, what this means, and if you watched most of the tutorials that I've done, Alphamate means I'm gonna use the layer on top of me to show myself. And the layer on top of this one is this square that we just created. Now, I would only be able to see that text here. All right. We'll see again. Perfect. Now we have a few more elements that we need to take care of. And it's, I'm just gonna go here, lock it so that I don't select it. And I'm just gonna select that little thing right there. You see it? And same thing here, same thing here. So all I want is those little elements. So I'm just gonna bring them up. Now, what I need to do is, so this is the center of this whole thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna go bring in the position of both ends. All right, so P for position, 1, 2, 20 frames. So shift, page up, page up. Page up and shift gives you 10 frames before. Shift, page down gives you 10 frames ahead. So that's what I say by go 20 frames. So 1, 1. So shift, page up, page up. Shift, page down, page down. All right. And I'm just gonna bring both of them to the center here. And then I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna bring it there too. All right. And then I'm gonna ease everything. I'll have to stay consistent with the speed. All right. But what would be amazing now is if these guys now, they blink. And this is the technique that I'm going to show you, and I need to explain it to you individually. Because we're going to be doing an animation that keeps on repeating again and again and again. So how do we avoid doing those animation and having to go copy the keyframes, put them there, copy the keyframes again, put them on this layer. Oh no, now I need to copy them again. Where did I put them? Okay, all right. So you get the point. Now, how do we make an animation once and we just apply it like a script or like a plugin? That's what I'm going to show you now. All right. All right. So let's look at our thing here. All right. So let's just focus on this little square here, little dot rather. And I'm going to go to opacity. I'm going to say it's going to end up there. And at the beginning, I'm gonna say it was 20. And then I'm gonna do a toggle hold keyframe. So literally what I'm doing now is I wanna blink it. Okay, so 20, it's gonna go to 10, and then it's gonna go to 50, and then it's gonna go to 35, and then it's gonna go to 100. All right, so basically what I have is something as so. It's really hard because it's so small. That's not what she said. Okay. Now, how do I avoid copying this and applying it to everything? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my opacity. I'm going to go to animation and I'm going to say save animation preset. No, I'm going to go and call this Poco Poco, which is a blink. I just call this a blink. All right. And I can save it wherever I want to do it. So for example, I can go to input and I can just call it Poco Poco. All right. Cool. Now, all I need to do now is take both layers now, like all the other things, animation, recent animation, Poco Poco. Cool. Now let's look at it. So they all have that opacity and I don't need to worry about anything. Now I can use these keyframes on any project that I'm gonna use forever. And that's the amazing thing about saving animation presets, is that you can reuse them as much as you want. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of offset, as you can see, and it's gonna come in. So let's just solo all these guys again. Perfect. Now, how are we going to bring the other text? It's exactly the same way. So when it comes to this, I could either bring it from below or I could bring them from the left and they just come here. But since this is actually a step by step, it is better if it actually comes a little bit like it comes in as a block So I'm just gonna go and show you an example of how we can do this. So I'm just gonna take both of these, break them up. All right. And I'm gonna say they're gonna come somewhere around here. Okay. Now let's focus on these two. So how are we gonna animate this? It's very simple. I'm just gonna take them, both of them, make sure that they are left aligned, so that if I need to change them, I can still do that without having to reposition everything. And the anchor point is in the center, so that I know exactly where they're coming from. Now, I'm gonna put them as 3D position, opacity. I'm gonna go to the end. I'm gonna say that they're gonna end here. Okay, boy. All right, girl. Whatever shape of the rainbow you are. And I'm just gonna push this a little bit back. All right, let's just say around 200. Okay, 200. Perfect. And I'm gonna say that these are 0. Or you know what? I'm gonna take both of these and I'm gonna say, oh, you know what? Do me a poco, but then into position. I want it to come fast, just like every other. Consistency is the key here. Now I'm gonna go to login and I'm gonna really offset this a bit by 5 frames. Let's go. Perfect. Okay, let's look at this. Good. And what would be amazing is that if we take now, what would be amazing now is if we take these. All right, so I'm just gonna go and bring in these all the way up again. So this is how I work on Animating UI. I go and I start taking one by one and I animate them. All right, and I'm just gonna bring them like so. All right, so this one, I think it's better if it comes not 20 frames, but just 10. And then it comes from here. And of course, the opacity, it's gonna fade in because it's a step process. So no need to blink it. And it's just a small item. All right, so when all that is, it's gonna show the next step. So these ones, they're just gonna be animated the same way as I did this one. Okay, time lapse, time. All right, so I started applying, as you can see, the same technique that we just saw for the first text, which is a position. And then I made a mistake because I was selecting position and I put the preset, so it didn't work. So I had to select opacity and then apply the preset. Okay, you can see that I save a lot, and this is a habit that I've made myself, so I don't even think about it. Every time that I do a certain milestone, I start saving a lot. So what I'm doing now is I'm just using the ruler to put where the center is of each line separator, and I'm just putting the points there, as you can see. And this is exactly how we animated the top points. I think this is probably the perfect time for me to tell you that I hope that you're doing well and that you're taking care of yourself. And if you're not, I hope that you get better. It always does get better. So just hang in there. All right, so in this part, what I'm doing is I'm trying to animate that little title of the module. So I started by doing the separator. And then what I did here was trying not to bring everything as an opacity, but I thought that maybe I could use this technique where I could scale it. So instead of me randomly thinking about a number, I just started from 0 to 100, and then I started taking keyframes in the middle, and then I just changed them into toggle hold, so I don't have to do a lot of work. Then I used the set matte, which is another way of doing alpha matte, so that if I ever decide to change that, how that filter holder comes up, the text doesn't need to change anything. All right, so as you can see, these animation presets are really helpful because I can use them literally anywhere. So what I did here for those 2 dots that you saw me just animate, what those means is that I'm just enlarging the window. Like this is the window for this module. So now I'm using some animation, text animation technique, using value and opacity, and I turn off the smoothness so that nothing animates smoothly, like everything comes up like a toggle hold keyframe. And what I did here, as you could see, was I animated and I saved the whole thing as a preset. And you'll see me throughout the time lapse and the project that I use this preset a lot. Again, this is a technique that I highly recommend you do, especially if you work with UI. All right, so I'm going to do exactly the same thing here. So again, I use this technique of bringing everything that I'm gonna animate up, and the things that I'm not yet animating, I'm keeping them down. And this is a technique that I just developed throughout the years. Some people might not like it, you might not like it, but I personally think that it's exactly how my mind likes to work. It's like keeping things in the backlog and then putting everything that I need to focus on in front. And once I finish with the most important thing, I bring in the secondary thing. And once I finish with the secondary thing, I bring in the tertiary things. And it keeps on going that way. So yeah, as you can see again, position and the Poco Poco blinking preset that we created. Again, I'm doing this window enlargement. So once the separator animate, I'll use the blink with the position to show that the window is about to enlarge. And this is something that you see a lot in games and movies, and especially Death Stranding. If you've played the game Death Stranding, or you can just YouTube a video of Death Stranding UI, and you'll see that they use the same thing. Tron, I think, Oblivion. So now what I do is I select all these lines and I put them up. And then I animate them using position. Selecting them all together, putting them down, faking the 3D. And I'm using PT Shift Layer, which is a script from aescripts.com. This script lets me offset things on a stagger manner, like you can see, like a stair, and it makes things look really beautiful. There we go. In just one click. So I don't need to go and shift the layers myself. All right, so the window enlargement, perfect. Now I did the counter here. So what I did was I created a new solid. I used this effect called number. I turned off the decimals, and I made the same font, and I made it the same size, and I just put the X and animated the value of the number as the lines comes in. So I just want to say that this is the counter for the number of lines, the number of data the terminal is counting. Right, and I used the same blinking effect, as you could see. I hold Alt, when I select all the keyframe, I hold Alt so that I can scale the keyframes. All right, and I'm testing them on my composition to see how they look like and how they feel, and if I feel like I want to change something. All right, so as you can see here, I felt like the lines are just appearing just randomly and just boringly. So what I did was I created a line here that would mean that the OS that is loading, the computer that is loading this, the program that is loading these lines and this database is actually first setting up where the line are gonna load. So this is what these blinking square means. You see, it gives this really beautiful effect of the computer is loading the line. It's not just making them appear, opacity and position, but you know, you add a little bit of aesthetic. And this is something that you develop throughout the years. You see a project, you like it, you take that idea, you put it on your project, and then again, you work on another project, you think of another idea, and then you put them together. So here what I'm doing is I'm animating this little, I call these the filters, the search filters, the result search filters. So I just animated one. As you can see, everything is just animated. And again, I stagger them and it just looks like buttons are loading. And just, this is how easy it is to stay focused and to have a workflow. When you have a workflow, you never, ever get lost. No matter how big, how small is the project, you're always safe. So now what I do is I do a technique I duplicate the composition and then I do whatever I want with it, and then I just go Alt, drag it on top of the Alt composition, and it just replaces it. So what I want to do here, I want to do a little bit of difference, and I want to say that search and collapse are not possible to be used as a filter. So they have that little dash line there, as you can see. So when they load, they come back. It's like, oh, you cannot use them. And this is kind of a design language that I decided to choose. So as you can see here, it's pretty cool. I like it. All right, now I'm taking that very special line, putting that icon in a new composition so that I can focus on it. So what I thought is maybe I can just rotate it, you know, since it's very designed. So I can just rotate it, and instead of me animating the position again of these things, I thought that I could just use the scale with the anchor point in the center. It's better than me figuring out the position. And for this ones, I just used a position myself, just roughly, because it's so small. This is the kind of details that, you know, when you just like to add, just because, hey, why not? All right, now that I like that, I said maybe what I want to do is I want to make these line that is selected in the path, in the database, it's gonna load whatever that is in the command line. So that's what I'm doing here. Try and animate the loading. It's like this is what's loading in the code module on the right of the screen. So everything is making sense. All right, now I'm seeing whether I can see it. You see? So that loading is actually loading this. All right, so what I did now is I duplicated this so that I can know exactly where every line is. Because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make them unfold. So I have to be very careful of how I do this. So the first thing that I did was I tried to align them together. I'm using the align window to make sure that they are correctly aligned and perfectly aligned. So I animate the command and I make sure that these little stars are just, you know, following them so that I don't have to animate twice the amount of animation. So it's just once. All right. And then I'm calculating for every 10 frame, that line is gonna appear. 10 frame is just enough for the user to actually see what's going on. Anything more than that, the user will be so overwhelmed. And your HUD might look like more fancy, or sometimes it just looks like too much. And I just like, whenever I create HUDs, I want the user to follow up. I don't want everything to be like, oh, it's in your face, everything is coming together like Fast and Furious. No, I don't like this style of Fast and Furious. I like the user to not feel overwhelmed. That's why all my designs are pretty clean when it comes to HUD. You don't see me using grunge textures or anything. I just like things to be clean. So again, as you can see, I'm still using the boat, the text animation, and the blinking, and it's useful here, even though in a separate module. I'm using the lines to make sure that I'm actually aligned with the reference that I have on the left. By the way, on the left, what I did was I made them as guide layers. So guide layers are just layers that are visible in the composition. So as you can see here, I don't even see them. I masked the module just so that if I want to select that, I'll be able to select it. Now I'm animating this error line. It's like a data that is corrupted. So I'm making that a little bit special. So it has its own animation. I'm animating the path. And then I'm going to bring in the text. And then I'm going to do like the server, the computer, the machine is actually testing some files and seeing either it can fix it, or either is there something that it can restore from this data. So there's this loading line, and then you use this loop out animation so that I can keep on repeating that loading line. And every single time that the line finishes, I change the text to show that, oh, it's loading a separate file. It's looking for a separate thing. So it looks very fancy and different. Now, the last thing is I animate that. So what I do is I put this in a composition so that I can focus on it. And I use exactly the same thing as I did for the title and the subtitle. And then I go in so that I can animate them the same thing so it looks more fancy and different. All right, that's all there is to this time-lapse. Alright, that's all there is for part 1 of animating the HUD UI animation. Next part, which is coming up next week, what we're going to be taking a look is how to composite this whole scene from scratch. Coming up from Cinema 4D, there's a lot of compositing techniques and tricks that I need to show you, especially how to go with render passes that are really useful for this kind of style, and how to create those beautiful star frames that are created in the 3 scenes. If you like this tutorial, let me know on the comment below. Make sure you like this video, and if you're not subscribed already, you are always welcome to subscribe for more tutorials. And there are more tutorials that you can see while you're waiting for the next week's tutorial. My name is Mr. Popo, and we are Popo. I'll see you on the next one.